Hi, I'm Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian, nutritionist, and owner of Baby Bloom Nutrition. Welcome to Nap Time Nutrition. Today we are doing choosing baby formula, and I feel like it's time. I've done a lot of talks on breastfeeding, and last week with Amy Woodward-Fields, RN IBCLC, we talked about pumping, longest nap time nutrition ever, and it got a really good reception because not everybody has an easy time breastfeeding. I didn't have an easy time breastfeeding, and some people go back to work, and there are a lot of different reasons why people make the choices they do. And I want to start off with that, saying that today we're talking about formula. I'm a breastfeeding advocate. I'm a feeding baby advocate. And I did do a nap time nutrition specifically on breast is best versus fed is best. And the thing is that it both comes down to fed is best. Giving your baby food is best. And there are donor milk banks out there, and it costs a lot of money to get donor milk. So if that's not an option, if you made the choice to do formula feeding, if you have adopted a child or had a mastectomy or you're fostering or what have you, there are so many different reasons, different medications, different health statuses, your own health, the baby's health. There's so many reasons, factors that come in when you're choosing how to feed your child. So I am an advocate of what is working for your family and what's making your baby thrive. So I wanted to start off with that. So here's the thing. When you look at formulas, you go to the formula aisle at the supermarket, and it is overwhelming. And it's not like going to the cereal aisle where you can say, oh, this looks good, I think I'm going to try that. And, it doesn't work out. You can't try a bunch of different formulas all at the same time. Like my kids have 5 different cereals in their bowl at the same time. Fine, that's fun. Choosing formula is not fun. So it's overwhelming. Everyone has an opinion, everyone has an experience, and the truth is that there are big differences between the different kinds of formula. So I'm here to help you decide which formula to use. And the first thing I really want to address is that we're talking about formula. I do not advocate giving babies milk to drink before 12 months. And I'll get into why closer to the end in my FAQ section. But that includes almond milk, rice milk, soy milk. Before 12 months, babies need breast milk or formula. And that's it. As far as hydration, I've done an nap time nutrition on giving babies water. You can start with that at about 6 months, but you really don't want to give anything as far as liquid other than breast milk or formula in the first 6 months. Then you start introducing food. I also did a nap time nutrition on food introduction, timing, and methods. I'm referencing a lot of other stuff, but I have a lot of material to cover, so let's get started. So first, how to choose. There are a lot of factors that may influence your decision: health, price, availability in your area, and these are all valid concerns. And I do want to say that any infant formula that's on the market in the United States fits certain requirements that were put forth by the FDA. They all fit those requirements. And I'm just going to make note of something else to cover. I want to cover everything. Okay. So health, price, and availability. So how is formula different than milk? So it's different than breast milk. I mean, breast milk comes from breasts, and formula is going to come from a container. So what are the differences there? Well, when we started out, and I'll show you a brief history of, just because I'm a geek, the history of commercially available infant formula, it has gone through a lot. But at this time, the intent is that formula mimics breast milk, and we do the best that we can with that. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a lot closer than it used to be. For instance, in 1867, formula contained wheat flour, cow milk, malt flour, and potassium bicarbonate, and that was supposed to be the perfect equivalent of milk. In the 1930s, they started thinking about the protein content, and when Similac came along, it was named because it's supposed to be similar to breast milk. Similac, lac meaning milk. So that was the intent. And this slide is just up to the mid 1960s when things started getting a little more responsible. But I will say that there are a lot of homemade formula products out there on Pinterest, recipes. That's not something that I advocate. When you're talking about an infant, there are really strong health considerations as far as what they can and can't tolerate. And I don't mean the size of the protein, although we'll get into that. I mean as far as sanitation. adults and older kids can have, they can handle a certain amount of bacterial load. They can process it. Our bodies know how to handle that and keep us healthy. Infants are really susceptible to infection. So it's really important that when you're using a formula, you're using a commercial formula that was formulated by experts, produced in a sanitary environment, and then when you get home, to take the necessary precautions to make sure that what you're giving your baby is sanitary from that point on, making sure that your water source is appropriate. In a lot of places, tap water is fine. In some places, it's not. So it's really good to stay on top of that. You want to make sure that your infant gets the healthiest nutrition possible. And that's not only the nutrient breakdown of the product, but how it came about and how clean it is. So, and we're talking about a clean diet for babies. It's different than a clean diet for adults. I'm just trying to keep pathogenic bacteria out of your baby's bottles. So that's a really important point. So how's it different than milk? Well, most formulas are cow milk based. I think about 80% of formulas that are commercially available in the United States are based in cow's milk, but they are not cow's milk. They have been altered from the cow's milk composition. They've been heated in order to alter the protein shape and amount, and to make it more digestible. So for instance, human milk has 60% whey and 40% casein, whereas your standard formula, or your cow's milk, straight cow's milk, is going to have 20% whey and 80% casein. Those are your two milk proteins, and they're digested very differently. Whey is going to cause faster stomach emptying, and casein is the one that curds. That's when, what's her name, was eating the curds in whey. Little Miss Muffet, eating her curds in whey. The curds are the casein, and the whey is, well, the whey. Those are your two milk proteins. It's likely she was eating some kind of cottage cheese, where they separate. So in formula, we also have added lactose. Lactose gets a really bad rap because a lot of people react to lactose as they get older. Infants don't have that problem nearly as often. If you find that your child is reacting to dairy, it's less likely the lactose and more likely the protein, and more likely the casein than the whey, although I have a child who seems to react to whey. All kids are different. So lactose is actually the predominant carbohydrate source in breast milk as well. But the lactose found in breast milk and the lactose found in cow's milk are going to be slightly different than each other, and they're going to be digested differently. Nevertheless, lactose is added to formula because it is an important source of calories, an important source of sweetness, and an important way that we can make it more like breast milk than just straight cow's milk. The oils are also replaced for easier digestibility. The butter fat is taken out of cow's milk and it's replaced with different vegetable oils, which sounds delicious. And then there are also the added mix-ins, and I love using that mix-ins because it makes me think of these ice cream places that like mix a bunch of stuff in, and that's kind of what's going on with our formula. You start with something that's kind of good and then try to make it better by adding a bunch of M&Ms. Although do not put M&Ms in your bottles. So what are things that are added to formula? Iron. Iron is often added, especially to the cow milk-based formulas. Generally, infants have enough iron stored in their liver from when they were still inside of another human to carry them through that 6 months. And I've talked about when you do introduce food, it's important to introduce foods that are high in iron because those iron sources are starting to deplete at that point. So a lot of times formulas will add iron. A little bit, getting a little bit ahead of the game there. Also, prebiotics and probiotics. Probiotics are what make up those are your gut bacteria. They make up your microbiome. The prebiotics are that bacteria's food. So as adults, I talk about iron and cabbage and raw garlic being fabulous prebiotics. Those things are not being added specifically to your formula, but other forms of prebiotics are. And DHA and ARA, which are essential fatty acids that are added to help with development, brain development. And it's a bit of a controversy at this point because it's impossible to replicate the DHA that's available in breast milk, but we try our hardest. And so a synthetic form of DHA is added to formulas in order to try to help with that development, try to help with that missing piece. Some people say if it's in breast milk, it should be in formula. Well, we try our hardest. So that's constantly under evaluation. It's constantly under research. Also, corn sugar is added. Corn sugar. Oh no, it's sweet. It's highly digestible. And so when you look at your label for formulas here, you're going to see maltodextrin, which in the United States is corn sourced. In Europe is more wheat sourced. And you're also going to see corn syrup. You might see high fructose corn syrup. And that is because it's a source of calories and sweetness. And those are important things. I'm not in love with the fact that they're corn sourced, but it's also not the end of the world. This is not the same thing as the corn syrup that you find in other candies and products. It does have a role in formula, although personally, I do wish there was a different source that was more commonly used. There's a lot of politics going into that, though. So 80% of formula is dairy-based, as I mentioned, and some kids don't tolerate that. Some kids don't tolerate milk through the breast milk either, and sometimes you have to kind of jump around different formulas to try to figure out what works best for your child. I don't recommend jumping around arbitrarily, meaning, oh, there's a different formula on sale, I should buy that. That can be tempting, but even gentle formula from one company and a gentle formula from another company are still going to have differences, and if your child tolerates one, stick with that one. And throughout this talk, everything I say, if it contradicts what's going on in your family with your child, just keep in mind, if your pediatrician has no concern about your child's growth and your child is thriving on what you have established, I'm here to answer questions, but I'm going to support what you're doing right now because it's working. So why mess with a good thing, right? So usually, as I mentioned, usually they don't react to lactose. It's usually the milk protein, usually casein. Lactose, when it's added to formula, not only adds that sweetness and the calories I mentioned, but it increases calcium absorption and it acts as a prebiotic to feed your microbiome and boost immunity in the baby. So all FDA regulated. All formulas in the United States are FDA regulated and they are determined to be safe. They follow a certain guidelines as far as what's in the formula, 29 specific nutrients that have to be there. And they're also inspected regularly. They have to send batches to be evaluated. Their facilities are inspected regularly. So we know that these are safe products. And baby formula is the safest food in the country from a hygienic perspective. And the sources of all the nutrients are different between companies, and that's going to be found on the label. The big thing is you need to read the label. If you're interested and awake enough, read the label to see where your food sources are, to see if your baby might react to something. Okay, so let's get to some specifics. And I liked this picture. Dairy versus soy, it's the constant controversy, right? So soy formula is more processed to be closer to milk. Okay. Cow's milk is processed in order to become formula, in order to make it safe and tolerated by little infant guts. But it is already a milk source that is meant for another species. Soy is a plant. It was never meant to be a formula, and so it has to be processed a little more intensely in order to be closer to milk and to provide what the infant needs. There are possible hormonal effects, such as early puberty or longer periods once menstruation begins for girls. That's early research, and there's a lot of research that's still going on with that, and that has to do with the phytoestrogens. I've mentioned in another Naptime Nutrition, specifically on soy, that any soy product that's pure, such as soy milk or soy sauce or tofu, etc., these things are pure sources, edamame. But when you get into the concentration of those soy products, specifically soy protein isolate, you really do get into a problem with the phytoestrogens, meaning that the hormones that are in that plant are possibly mimicking the estrogens in your system, which could lead to certain health ills. And that could be a concern with infant formula. It's very difficult to do studies specifically on infant formula just because of the legal aspect and the ethical aspect of testing on babies. So when you think about it that way, it does make sense that a lot of this is up in the air. We just really don't have an ethical way to test it. 60% of kids who react to dairy are also going to react to soy. So it's a good thing to try. If you really do believe your child is reacting to dairy, you can try the soy formula. It may or may not work. A better idea when your child is reacting to a dairy-based formula is to switch to a whey-based formula. That's 100% whey, because it's going to be better tolerated, it's going to be better digested, and unless you have an ethical issue with using dairy, it's a good way to go. Okay, now back to me. So our next type, hydrolyzed. So what does hydrolyzed mean? I tried to look for a picture of broken down proteins, but I couldn't find one I liked. So you have your protein. Oh, should have grabbed a Lego structure. Okay, imagine a Lego castle. That's your protein. And when it's hydrolyzed, if it's partially hydrolyzed, you break it down to its walls. So now you have 4 walls and a floor. And when you have free amino acids, you just have a bunch of Legos laying around. And these are the different ways that we can break down formula. So most formula comes as whole proteins. And if your child is thriving on that, that's perfectly fine. It's a little bit more expensive to get partially hydrolyzed formula. There is some benefit to kids who are not tolerating full protein formula. It has the same amount of protein. It's just that the protein chains went from being whole to being shorter. So it's a little bit easier digested. When you have fully hydrolyzed, it gets it's hypoallergenic because it's no longer recognized as a protein in the body. It's broken down into the amino acid building blocks of the protein, which means that the child who's having a reaction to some protein is not going to react as much. Any allergic reaction and a lot of intolerances are reactions to proteins. And when you take that protein structure and you break it down into smaller parts, the body doesn't recognize it as a protein, and there are no reactions because of that. So that's the ideal. My husband's calling. He should be watching me. Where was I? So hydrolyzed is best for atopic reactions, including eczema. And up to 1/3 of infants have such problems, have that red rash, that eczema. So that's a good thing to start off with for that. Partial or full hydrolysis, really, if you're having a major problem, you go with the full hydrolysis in order to get that benefit, the fully hydrolyzed, and you're going to see it on the label. There's partially hydrolyzed, fully hydrolyzed. The free amino acid ones are really, they're for extreme cases. They should be given by a GI or a pediatrician. They're going to be by prescription, and they are very expensive. Those are only in extreme cases. There are also other things that you can try when your child is having GI upset, when there's gas, fussiness, colic. You can try baby wearing and baby massage. It's really good to have that skin-to-skin contact, because a lot of times these reactions are due to an immature gut, especially if your baby was born a little bit early. And having that skin-to-skin contact helps to speed up the maturation of their GI tract, which means that they're going to process foods a little bit better. You have your specialty formulas after that, the specific ones for specific conditions. Reflux formulas. I think this is very interesting. Some of them have AR at the end, and you may think that AR stands for acid reflux, but truly it stands for added rice. And a lot of times now, it used to be that doctors prescribed adding infant rice cereal to the bottle for reflux, and it was found that there really isn't any evidence backing that up, and there is actually a danger. As that food curdles, when babies spit up, because all babies spit up, they are not able to clear it. Generally, infants at that age are not able to move their necks. So when this curdle comes up, when it's just formula or just breast milk, they can clear that, and there isn't really a choking hazard. But when we start to thicken the milk inappropriately, then they're going to be spitting up something that has a lot more than just your normal milk curdles in it. And that can cause a choking hazard, as the child can't move around to clear it on their own. So that is not, that's not something that I recommend, adding rice cereal or using these thickened formulas. It's better to try the whey source, as I mentioned, which fosters the stomach emptying. And as that stomach empties a little bit faster, it doesn't have a chance to shoot up, causing that pain as it shoots into the esophagus. And as I mentioned, positioning. Positioning for feeding, you want the child to be at an angle when they're feeding. You want to keep them upright 15 to 20 minutes after each feeding, and that does include nighttime feedings. And you really want to do a lot of baby wearing for that skin-to-skin contact and to keep them in a position that's beneficial for digestion. So colic. This is always a fun word because everyone has a different definition of it, you know, kind of like nutrition. So colic is really just general fussiness. Your child is screaming for more than 2 hours. Your child is just generally unhappy. And all of that is labeled colic, but it can have different causes, different reasons that your child is having that discomfort. So think about why the child is fussy. I love Happiest Baby on the Block. I think that those methods are fantastic. It's worth the $20. I think $10, $20 on the Amazon. You can stream it and watch the 20-minute video, and it saved my sanity. I know that. So if you have a colicky child, watch Happiest Baby on the Block. It may not solve all of your problems, but it helps to add some things to your toolbox. Baby wearing, it's great. Infant massage, I do like some of those gas drops. And different formulas are very different. I talked about this at the beginning. Even if you have a gentle formula and a different gentle formula is on sale, don't switch, because whatever is working is working. If it's not working, try something different, but make sure you communicate that with your pediatrician or registered dietitian. Some formulas are going to contain probiotics to help with colic and gas fussiness. Often it's L-reuteri, and it's fun to say, right? All these Latin terms. I like probiotics. I'm a big advocate of probiotics with kids, especially if there's a C-section birth, especially if they're getting formula. I think it's important to add probiotics into it. And I believe I've done probiotics before. If not, I'll have to cover that next time. If there's eczema, we talked about hydrolyzed formula. It's really important to have a hydrolyzed formula in order to help with that. Eczema can also be, oh, William says thumbs up. Oh, William and Carmen, thank you. I love that. Look, I can even show that. It's fun. Yay. And now you're famous. So for eczema, it could be caused by nutrition. It's often caused by nutrition, but it could also be caused by other things. It could be caused by soap in the bath, different detergents, what have you, environmental things. If they're allergic to something they're touching, that could cause eczema as well. So it's important to really explore that with your pediatrician to find out what the trigger is. If you're breastfeeding and there's eczema, because I'm talking about formula, but formula doesn't necessarily mean exclusive formula. You could be doing a couple of different things. I know I've done that. So if there's eczema, you want to also address that through the mother's diet if there's breastfeeding involved. And often that's eggs, but it depends on what is really angering your child and making them look like this. Oh, sad baby. But I love the rolls on his arms, right? So let's talk about some frequently asked questions. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them at me. So why corn syrup? I talked about how corn syrup is definitely one of the first ingredients in a lot of formulas produced in the United States. It's a source of calories and it's sweet. It's an effective source of calories. It's a cheap source of calories. And it's a political source of calories. And there are books written on the politics of corn in the United States. But it is important as an ingredient. It is important to have those calories. And yes, I do wish they came from someplace else, but we work with what we have, right? And I will get to the other alternatives, shipping in formula from Israel and the United Nations. I meant the European Union, not the United Nations. Okay, in the United, I don't want to mess up again. In Europe, maltodextrin, also which is also included in formula, is wheat-based, and in the United States is corn-based. So when you see maltodextrin on a product that was made in the US, including formula, it's generally coming from corn. And in Europe, you'll see the same ingredient, but it's not coming from corn because they don't have nearly as much of it. They produce it from wheat. And you're also going to see lactose. And I talked about lactose a little bit earlier when I was talking about how there's a lot of lactose in breast milk, so we need to add it to formulas. So goat milk formula. So this is a really big thing lately, and people are shipping in goat milk formula from, specifically there's a company called Holly in Germany, and they're shipping that in, and it can be very expensive. It can be $1.26 an ounce to $2.39 an ounce, as compared to just under $1 an ounce for most standard formulas produced in the United States. And so they produce goat milk formula as well as cow milk formula. And what's been shown in research is that infant growth is the same between the cow milk formula and the goat milk based formula. People may choose goat milk formula because the proteins are a different shape than cow's milk, and sometimes they're digested better. So if you have the money to spend, and if your child is not tolerating a cow's milk based formula, you could try the goat milk formula and see what happens. It may be better digested, maybe not. It does increase the biodiversity in your microbiome. So I'm going to translate that. You have a lot of bacteria in your gut. You have more bacteria in your gut than you have actual human cells in the rest of your body. You are 10 times as much bacteria as you are human. And it's important that not only do you have that much bacteria in your gut, but it's important that you have lots of different kinds. We want really diversification in the types of bacteria that are colonizing your colon. Well, really colonizing your gut in general. And it's been found that on a goat milk-based formula, there is more biodiversity. There are more different kinds of probiotics in your gut than using the cow's milk-based formula. But again, it is pretty pricey, and those benefits can be had in other ways. Should you use organic? Well, I would love to say yes, but it's just not financially possible for a lot of people. However, if you use a generic organic formula, and again, that's still going to be regulated and following FDA regulations, it's financially comparable to a name brand conventional. So for instance, Walmart makes an organic formula, and that's going to be roughly the same price as some of your Gerber or Similac, because you're comparing generic versus name brand. And as far as safety, they're all about the same. As far as the sources of the ingredients, look at the label and see what works best for you. So getting to price, there's a huge difference in price. Some of them are, a lot of the Gerber ones are 89 cents an ounce. I love Earth's Best, as that's organic. You can buy it at Whole Foods, you can buy it at CVS or Walgreens. It's pretty much everywhere now. That's about the same price. It's going to be about 91 cents an ounce as compared to the 89 cents an ounce for Gerber Good Start soy. And the Gerber Good Start Gentle is 91 cents an ounce. So you see, we're kind of dancing around the same price there. When you get up into the prescription ones, you get to 188 an ounce, even higher. The Holly Goat formula, which you have shipped from Germany, free shipping, comes to about 239 an ounce. So if you really want to do that, you can go for that. But see what works for you. There are different things that work for different people. As far as scheduling, this is always the question, whether you're breastfeeding, you're bottle feeding, you're doing some combination. It is best when you have an infant to feed on demand. In the NICU, hopefully your child has not experienced that. Hopefully you have not experienced that. They get their children on a schedule. And there isn't a problem with that because that's a proactive schedule that's meant to encourage adequate growth. That's not the same as your child is up and screaming for a bottle or a breast and it hasn't been exactly 3 hours, so you're holding out. No, feed on demand. You never know when your child is coming up on a milestone or having a growth spurt or fighting off an illness, what have you. Sometimes their schedules change a little bit. When you get closer to a year, then you do want to have some kind of schedule, but your children are going to create their own schedule. And you can use that to predict kind of what's going on, but organizing your day by scheduling when they're going to be fed ahead of time with no flexibility is not going to be in their best interest or in your best interest or in your head's best interest. So why not milk? If you're not breastfeeding, why not just give cow's milk or goat's milk? This is a really big thing now. People ask this a lot. Often it's further confused by the fact that we say when you start feeding, you can give them yogurt, you can give them cheese. So why not milk? So here's the thing. Until a baby hits 12 months old, their main nutrition is coming from breast milk or formula. From breast milk or formula. Food has a really big role, but it's not nutrition. The role of food at this point is going to be for muscle development, for exposure, for social environment at the table, for interaction with other family members. And these are all very important things to keep in mind when you're parenting. But your major nutrition until that 12-month mark is still breast milk or formula. When you give milk to drink, it displaces breast milk or formula, which are formulated specifically to meet your child's needs. Cow's milk does not meet your child's needs. Goat milk does not meet your child's needs. They have different protein amount and different sodium amount, and there are a lot of differences. I can probably post a chart on the differences, but you really don't want to get into that. You want to stick with breast milk or formula until 12 months. So then the next question is toddler formula. What do you do after 12 months? Toddler formula, in my educated opinion, is a waste of money. It's a marketing ploy. At 12 months, you should be able to switch your child to cow's milk. If you're not into switching to cow's milk, I have an Naptime Nutrition on milk alternatives in the transition to milk, and I cover what you're going to do if you're switching to almond milk, rice milk, soy milk, hemp milk, walnut milk, whatever, fill in the blank. Those are all valid options. I don't even know if walnut milk actually exists. I might have just made that up. I should probably trademark that. But these are all valid options, but there are ways to handle it. There is no need for a toddler formula, since that nutrition should be met at that point with solid foods. If your child is having inappropriate growth patterns and your pediatrician is concerned, contact a pediatric registered dietitian for help on specifically looking at your nutrition, your child's nutrition, and what the best way forward is to ensure health and adequate development. It's really important to get that information from an appropriate healthcare provider who has your medical chart in their hand, not just the person who's putting your groceries in a bag or your next door neighbor who had kids 50 years ago. So that's really important. So yeah, no on the toddler formula. So that was my talk on formula. That was a whole lot of information. If you have any questions, concerns, other frequently asked questions that I have not addressed, please write them, send me comments, send me PMs. And I didn't have a lot of frequently asked questions because when I went to look up concerns, I found a lot of breastfeed your baby, formula is terrible, stay away from it. And I think that it doesn't. Oh, Matthew Coleman says, I love walnut milk. I think you are joking because I'm not sure it exists, but thanks for trying. Thanks for playing. 2 points for you. So it's really frustrating when you're just looking to get a question answered and all you're getting is shaming, bottle shaming. We need to love each other. Everyone makes their decisions for different reasons. And those moms who are bottle feeding, you don't know what's in the bottle, and it's also not your business. So support each other, love each other. You don't know what's going on in someone else's head and what's going on in someone else's heart. So let's be kind. No more mommy shaming. So, okay, here's my news. I have Save My Sanity program coming up, which is 3 weeks of a semi-private. You have private counseling as well as small group counseling, and I address everything as far as parenthood nutrition, from meal planning, grocery shopping, how to not get overwhelmed at any of these steps, putting the food on your table, feeding your family without losing your sanity, and on a budget, and accounting for the fact that you hate cooking, even if you love cooking. So join me for that. PM me to register for that. That's starting November 4th. And I have Toddler Test Kitchen coming up, which is super exciting, starting that at the Farm South Mountain next to Botanica. And that's going to be November 25th at 10 a.m. And if you are a Phoenix area local, I'm going to be speaking with Elisheva Dorfman, who is an eating disorder therapist, and we're going to talk about raising healthy kids. That's going to be at a location in Chandler. So I will post the event for that, and you should come to that. It's only $12. And if you're a dietitian or a teacher, we're offering continuing education credits. So I hope to see you. Sign up for my newsletter, like me on Facebook, and send me some love. See you next week. I have not decided on the topic, but it might be prebiotics and probiotics.